Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Netters Network Thursday Things. Let me know if you can hear me okay. And I need to mute my YouTube because I'm echoing in my own ear.
I do that too.
Oh, it drives me crazy because I can hear another voice that's like, okay, what is that?
Oh, that's me.
Yeah, it's like, and then it throws me off because I can hear me twice. As usual, I have my wonderful co-host, the love of my life. You know him as Friday Night Last Call, Carton the Klingon Cleric, and hey, you at the end of the bar, Troy Pacelli, the love of my life. How you doing tonight, sweetie, and what are you sipping on?
I'm doing just fine. I'll be doing better when the weekend is upon us, but we're more than halfway through it, so I'm doing pretty good. I am sipping on a wild cherry sparkling water.
And I have a Fuji apple sparkling water. This stuff is great. You get it from Walmart. And a friend of ours, Skipper Kenner, turned us on to it. Real good friend of ours. We were by his house, and he's like, "Hey, you want something to drink?" And we're like, "Sure." He goes,
"Show them mine. The
wanna
labels
try?"
look identical, except
Oh yeah.
I mean, it would be so easy for me to take the wrong one.
So mine,
It's apple versus cherry.
mine, his.
Same color and everything.
And so he asked us if we want something to drink, and we're like, "Sure." So he gets us these waters, and these were so good. And it's like, we gotta get some of these. So yeah, you can get them at Walmart apparently. And they're we discovered that the wild cherry tastes better than the black cherry, but I like the Fuji apple because it tastes like a crisp apple. I mean, it's really bizarre that you take a drink and you feel like you've just been into a crisp apple. Really great stuff.
Yep.
So if at Walmart by you, go pick up a couple. Of course, I don't want to leave our guest waiting too
Right.
long. He's probably got the longest title of any guest I've ever had. I'm just going to call him CK. So let's welcome to the channel CK. How you doing tonight, sweetie? And what are you sipping on?
I'm good. I have Minute Maid lemonade in a can.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Very nice.
I'll tell you what, Minute Maid lemonade is probably the one that tastes best out of a can. There's a couple of different brands that do cans of lemonade, and I don't like any of them but Minute Maid. I know. I'm weird.
I am so sad that at least where I'm at, they don't have Kroger brand pink lemonade anymore. The specifically Kroger brand, and it had to be the pink, not the normal kind, was like the most addictive thing I've ever encountered in my life. I would just sit there and drink like a case of it in the course of a game,
Man, that's killer.
Do you games?
Okay, so where you're at in Ohio, you shop at Kroger. I don't even know if they still make this, but years ago there used to be a soft drink called Hillbilly Juice. Did you ever get that?
Oh yeah, it's Mountain Dew basically.
It's basically Mountain Dew. Yeah. See,
yeah, off-brand Mountain Dew.
I loved that as a kid. Oh my gosh! And of course, I could only get it in the summers when I was out in Ohio. I'm glad somebody knows about it.
They don't have it in the Chicago area?
No, they never did.
Oh wow! Now, I was just gonna say, now there's all these little places that popped up like Save-A-Lot. And everybody, because I guess Ohio is like Mountain Dew country, apparently. So like everybody has knockoff Mountain Dew, and it's always like Mountain Lightning or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked Hillbilly Juice, and it was perfect for washing down Jones potato chips.
What
yeah.
Like?
Huh?
The Hillbilly Juice. What it tastes like?
Kind of like Mountain Dew, but I felt it was a little bit more lemony.
Okay.
I could go with that. To me, all the off-brand Mountain Dews to me taste like they got a little too much like concentrate.
Oh, could be.
In them, like they're kind of like syrupy.
Yeah.
So I am a big Mountain Dew drinker, but I usually just stick with normal, plain old Mountain Dew. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, before we get too far into our discussion tonight, let me say hello to the chat.
Absolutely.
Of course, the first one in was our guest, longest running superhero RPG on Earth. That is a title.
Yeah, you got to say it at least once.
Yes.
But he is tagged in the
description below.
And of course, deleted scenes is dropping. Mm-hmm. So make sure, if you're not already, please right-click and subscribe to Chris Kent.
Then we also have that Troy Pacelli guy.
Hello.
Connie Cleary, how you doing tonight, sweetie? Let's see. Then we have our everyone's favorite Blue Wrench, who is totally amazing. And I know that I saw it on here. He is 7 subs away from 200. Come on, guys. We can make this happen. He only needs 7 more subs to make his 200.
Well, if we can get 7 people in here who aren't already subscribed to him, that's the problem.
That's what I tell you. Make sure that if you sub to somebody, you
Yeah.
are still sub to them.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
YouTube likes to take away subs. We all know this. I mean, how many times have you gotten, 5, 10, 15, whatever subs, and then the next day you find out you've lost all but like 2 because YouTube took away, because you can't possibly be that popular. I hate YouTube sometimes.
Yeah.
Let's see, who else do we have in the chat? We have Evelyn Hampton. How you doing tonight, sweetie? And I didn't drop a high school review in the chat, so I need to do that.
And I was busy typing, so I didn't hear. Did you say hi to Connie Cleary?
I did.
Okay.
So Evelyn Hampton, Logical Spock. How you doing tonight, sweetie?
There you go.
Typos are accepted.
Absolutely. In fact, they're expected.
Yeah, it's like, have you seen the way I type? Big Al Presents. How you doing tonight, sweetie?
CK likes Mountain Dew, a man of great taste, Big Al says. Good, good.
I think I got everybody. My screen just jumped, but I think I got everybody.
It's everyone so far.
Yeah, so if I did miss anybody, hi, sweetie.
Yes, absolutely.
And thank you all for being here tonight. Now I'm going to start off with my usual questions. So, how did you get started? And what made you want to start a channel to begin with? So, like, which came first? You're like, I want to start a channel, or did something inspire you to start a channel? And then you're like, okay, I'm going to do this and run with it.
Well, we started the game in 1985. My family was on vacation, and we saw it in a bookstore, and bought it, and started playing it right away.
This was the Mayfair Games DC? Okay.
DC Heroes, yeah. And at any rate, sorry, I have horrible allergies tonight. I put a cough drop in, so I'm not hacking the whole time. I'm sorry if this is making weird noises or is distracting.
No, you got to do what you got to do. Don't worry about it.
So then, over the years, I've tried to add it up, and I think we've had something like about 500 players. But never all at once.
That would be a heck of a game.
I was like,
yeah.
I was really impressed.
Well, no, I'm still impressed.
Like, slightly off topic for a quick second, but like when Terminator 2 came out, and they said the end of the world was August 29th, 1997. The guy who's the GM at the time knew that was because we would graduate in 94. He's like, well, surely we'll be done playing this game by then. So he said that was the end of the world. It was August 29th, 1997. And when that day rolled around, I invited everybody who'd ever played, and I did have 50 people show up for that game.
Wow.
And that was the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and we rented a town hall and played all night long. And just a weird whatever. I remember that morning is when Princess Diana died.
Oh yeah.
Like I'd been up all night, was on my way home, and heard the news. I thought that's kind of weird. At any rate, that's the most I've ever had at once. And then in college, I'd maybe have at most like 20 people at a time. Or when I had my comic book store, maybe 20 people. But it was way more often was the case. It'd be about half that many. 10 people or a dozen people or something, These days, it's like 4 or 5 people,
Do you find yourself preferring to run larger groups of people or smaller groups, or do you not have a preference?
My perfect number is 3, actually.
Yeah. I hear you.
I've run solo adventures for like, my best friend or my son or whatever, from time to time. And sometimes that's cool to like do like a spotlight kind of thing, but I feel like you don't have that same energy you do like in a group of people. And the more people that are throwing out ideas, everybody kind of feeds on that,
Yeah.
And then if you have 2 people, that's cool, but it just for some reason seems awkward. When you get that third person in there, I feel like that's the sweet spot. And that's kind of my ideal thing is just 3 people. And then if you get 4 people, I feel like that's when you start to see people argue.
Yep.
And that's the very beginning of kind of like, well, these 2 characters think we should go left, but these 2 characters think you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it's 3 people, like usually 2 people outnumber the other one or whatever, voting wise. And I don't know, but I 3 is my ideal number.
I honestly could not agree with you more. My weekly D&D group is 3 players and a GM.
Yeah.
And honestly, though, if one person can't make it, it's like, okay, we're not playing tonight. We'll pick it up next week, because it really is off balance. The person, is, especially if it's obviously if it's the dungeon master, you got a problem. But I mean, the one player out makes a difference. When you get to 4 people, now I've had four players and sometimes more, and I've had good groups where we didn't have conflict, but I feel like combat and actions drag. 3 people's the sweet spot for getting around the table for rounds of combat. When it gets to 4, 5, 6, it's like, I'm going to go make myself a burrito while you guys...
Yeah.
Let me know if I take damage,
We've had that a couple of times where someone was taking so long to take their actions. It's like, come on already. It's like, my guy's been sitting here holding onto a tree branch for an hour waiting for you to roll your dice.
Well, and not to throw shade at D&D, because God knows I've played thousands of adventures of D&D over the years, but I feel like the game I run, DC Heroes and D&D, are almost on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to how long it takes to do a round.
Yeah.
And for us, it's very much like I shoot him with an energy blast, roll, you missed, next guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally that, like you roll 2d10. What did you get? 15 or better? No. All right. You're done. Next guy. And we're like, boom, boom, boom. That was a turn. Next turn, boom, boom, boom. And like when I play, especially at my store, when we ran D&D, I'm not joking. A round took an hour. When there were 20 guys sitting around a big table in a comic shop, and they always got that one guy that's like, what spells can I cast again?
It's like you've just been through 10 other people. You could have been looking up your spell all this time.
Yeah. And with DC Heroes, it's very like every power has a self-explanatory name, like digging, running, and it's like, what does running do again? Guess.
It makes you fly. What do you think?
Real quickly, we invited DJ Ronnie G. Thank you for coming, sweetie. Hi, sweetie. How you doing? I know Deleted Scene's going to be dropping the link to your channel in the chat. So if you're not already subscribed to DJ Ronnie, make sure that you are. And of course, we all appreciate DJ Ronnie if you sub to us.
Right.
Together we grow.
Hopefully tonight's show we earn those subs. But yeah, I up until COVID, we were meeting at my place at the table, rolling the dice. We were starting to get really efficient. I mean, to the point where they'd have the D20 for the 2 hit and their damage dice, and they'd roll them together. If they didn't hit, no harm, no foul. If it did hit, they've already rolled their damage.
Interesting.
We were getting really good at it. Now we're trying to make the transition to the virtual tabletop because,
that's rough.
Throughout COVID, and whatnot. And even now, even though we don't have to do that, it's like we've kind of got into a slump. And,
No, so he says the guys came over for game night. I know they came over for my cookies.
Yeah, she would make cookies every week, and I haven't had... Well, she's made cookies once in the past 3 years, but it's because there hasn't been a real impetus, So.
I made them twice.
But, so I totally hear what you're saying there.
And I know one of the biggest challenges, at least ones that we've experienced at least twice, where you have that one player who has to cheat.
Yes.
And it's like, I'm doing this spell. It's like, that's not even your level. That's like 3 levels above you. You can't do that spell.
You got a story, don't you?
No. It's I'm like, I'm gonna just be quiet because everybody who plays in my game is gonna watch this tomorrow.
Okay, that's fair. Well, can I tell you a story then?
Sure.
Is it okay if I
Yeah,
tell
you can't. Are you telling the one about
the big epic?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It's like, wait, first of all, if you see me looking kind of up and over,
Yeah.
Troy is literally right
Yeah.
opposite me, and
She's
I'll look over
facing
my
right.
laptop to see
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, she's got to look over her camera to look at me directly. So, okay, I'll try to make this quick. And I think a lot of my regulars have heard this story before, but it's been a while. So I had been running a Dungeons and Dragons adventure path. Do you know what those are in third edition Pathfinder? Okay.
I don't think I've ever played Pathfinder. I know what it is, but I've not played it. I don't think.
Pathfinder was the spin-off from D&D. Pathfinder is put out by Paizo Games.
Right.
Paizo had been working with Wizards of the Coast, and they were doing their magazines, Dungeon and Dragon magazines, different magazines.
Right.
Well, in their magazines, for Wizards, they were publishing monthly these adventure paths, which were basically campaigns. They were like, you could think of them as a collection of modules, but they went into a lot of detail around the module so that you could do a whole bunch of things. You kind of build up the world and the setting, and you could have side tangents and whatnot. It was really kind of cool.
You guys can't see him because he just has his eye kind of, but he's Italian, so I'm seeing a lot of this as he's talking.
Yeah, I'm just, my hands are flying all over the place. And so anyway, I put a lot of effort into it. I tend to go down the rabbit hole, and so I read all the extraneous information, all this kind of stuff, and I was even doing a blog. I've been thinking about turning it into a kind of like what you do on your channel, where I do a narrative, but I had written it out as almost like a novella each week. I was, transcribing and putting it up on a web page.
And he even asked me, he goes, if you had this scenario, what would you do? Because he was trying to make sure this was totally foolproof. And I came up with, this is what I would do.
We were about halfway through the campaign, right? And it was, I was going for the big no-win scenario, right? And I'll be blatant. I was ripping off, what was the second Christopher Nolan Batman movie? Was that Dark Knight Returns or whatever?
I don't know. I wasn't a big Nolan guy. I don't know.
Okay. But the whole thing was the Joker had, put his girlfriend on one side of the city and, I don't know, some other pictures on the other, and you could only save
Two-Face or something. Yeah.
Yeah. You could only save one or the other, and, if you pick one, the others die and so forth. So I was doing something very similar. But when you're doing it in Dungeons and Dragons, you got to think through all the magic.
Deleted scene says Dark Knight.
It was Dark Knight. Okay. I was thinking through teleportation. I was thinking through, if they split the party and so forth. So I had like this, they have a key that can open, one cell or the other on opposite sides of an island. This happened to be the Isle of Dread, by the way, for those of you that know your Dungeons and Dragons lore. If you insert the key into one, kind of like, the whole Schrodinger's cat thing, decoherence or whatever, it automatically sets off the trap on the other one. You won't work there or whatever. They tried making a magical copy through certain spells of the key. That didn't work. But they tried, and I knew they were going to try. Well, I was on the Paizo forums talking to other players and dungeon masters that were, that knew this.
I think I see where this is going.
Everything that I was doing, right? And I was getting great ideas, a lot of troubleshooting. If it was me, I would do this. I'd be like, okay, perfect, thanks. So I had the counter thing to it. One of my players was reading and knew exactly what was coming. So for one thing, he had all the perfect spells he needed, which just, with how it works, you got to choose your spells in advance. And he was choosing spells that he had no reason to choose.
Right.
And they were higher than his level.
Yeah. And, well, that was the other thing I was getting to. And then he cast a spell that he shouldn't have been able to cast. And I'm like, let me see your character sheet. I want to see the spells that you chose. And he's like, I don't have them written down. I know what I... And I'm like, yeah, you just cast this spell, and you're not high enough level to do that. How do you pull that off? And it became a big argument. And it was really heated, but what really blew it for me was when he said, well, you know, don't blame me because you didn't prepare well enough.
Yeah,
And
that's annoying.
I was working on the boards. I was talking to Netter and, you know, getting all this invite. I'm like, I didn't prepare. I said, okay, we're done for tonight. Get out of my house, you know? And,
Yeah.
You know, it was one of those things afterwards, everyone calls and like, you know, man, we're on your side. He was cheating. I wouldn't have him back. So I'm like, yeah, not a problem.
I see. Now I'm reminded of a story.
Okay.
If it's okay.
Oh, yeah, that's
Definitely okay.
There, I don't know. 15 years ago, I guess I had this friend named Chris Crows, and his big thing was you'd encounter something in like D&D, and he'd go, "Hey, I'm gonna go smoke a cigarette," and he'd go outside. We'd see him on his phone, and he'd be looking up the stats of the monster. Does it have any weaknesses? And he'd come in and go, "Oh, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to light my torch and throw it at the you know." And so me and my wife were talking about it, and there were like local elections for mayor or judge or something like that.
Yeah.
And we kept seeing this sign, and the guy's name seemed to be like it was Lefffelhoc.
Uh-huh.
And it was like vote for Lefffelhoc or whatever. And I said, that sounds like a kind of hawk, like a Leffel hawk. And I was like, we should make a thing in D&D, and we should call it a Lefffelhoc.
Uh-huh.
And so we did. And so we kind of go into, like, the irony is I don't like horror movies. That's just not my thing.
Sure.
But I've been told I run a really good horror game that I just load it with all the right adjectives to creep you out, so on and so forth. And so I'm describing, you know, there's this bird of prey, and you see the shadow go over you. And I'm talking about how massive it's, like pterodactyl-sized shadow. And so I say something to my wife that I'm like, pass me the stats for the Lefffelhoc there or whatever. And the irony is, it's all smoke and mirrors. I didn't even have stats for the thing.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, oh, I got to go smoke a cigarette. And so he's out there for like, I bet 45 minutes.
Oh God!
Where he's like going through it, like which is that one of the new monster manuals? Is that something he got? Because sometimes I'd pull stuff out of old AD&D stuff that you know they never made for. Because my era was kind of like 3.0.
Yeah.
And at any rate, he couldn't find it, and he got so mad. Not only did he quit the game, he just quit coming around. Wow. And he had almost been like my best friend at the time. And he got so irritated about that Lefffelhoc thing, we basically never saw him again. It's kind of weird.
That's killer. Yeah.
Now, in our case, the fellow that we kicked out of our house and out of the game did contact Troy and apologize.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. And I'm like, that's fine. I appreciate that, but I said, I am not inclined to have you back, though, because I can forgive you, but I put so much effort into that. To have you derail it that way, I said, and it's not just me. The other players are feeling the same way, you know?
Yeah.
But, in fact, okay, another story. This was a Star Wars role-playing game. And I'm going to tell that one. Yeah. So it was mostly the same players, with one exception. This was a buddy from back in my college days. He was definitely one of those. He'd cheat. He'd roll the dice, and if he didn't like them, he'd re-roll them.
And then just say he was just
okay. That's my real role, you know. Yeah. And we all kind of just let him go, you know. We didn't call him on it. It's because, you know, there's a lot of rule zero happening anyway, where the the dungeon master would make it a little bit tougher if you were getting too good of rolls, make it a little easier if it looked like it was going to be a TPK, that kind of a thing. But there was, I was running a Star Wars role-playing game, and I was really going for the off-brand characters to kind of mirror the characters from Star Wars. So there was a
Right.
there was a Jabba the Hutt analog. There was
Right,
a Darth
right.
Vader analog. All those kinds of things.
Sure.
And
There was my R2R.
yeah, and Netter had her R2 unit and so forth. Well,
I was
this
the mechanic on the ship.
this is where it gets really interesting because their ship got taken, repossessed, so to speak, by the bounty hunter, or not the bounty hunter, the crime lord. And I describe, and they're like, we're going to get our ship back. And they go into the palace or whatever, and I describe it just like Return of the Jedi with the Boba Fett analog and so on and so forth and whatnot. And they had this all planned out, and they're like, we take out the Boba Fett analog first. They blast him, they blast everybody else, and the crime lord, surrenders, and he goes to reach for something, and they shoot him. They didn't know this, but he was reaching for a drink. He wasn't reaching for a weapon. So they kill him. I don't want to say start looting the place, but they're looking for, the hangar bay to get their ship. They get to the ship, and there's this guy working on it who's a tongue-tied engineer. And he says to him, look, he goes, I know what's going on here, but you just killed my boss, and I'm out of work, and I've done a lot of modifications on your ship. Take me with you. You're going to need my, guidance and help on some of these, improvements that I've made. They're like, okay, fine. They take him along with them. So I went through a couple other adventures until we get to an Endor-like scenario where they have to infiltrate the bunker, right? To take out the Imperial garrison. And they're doing all the sneak, right? And they get in and they think they're good, and all of a sudden the doors close behind them, and they're surrounded by stormtroopers, and then comes around the corner is the Darth Vader analog. And, so glad you could join us. And they look at each other and they go, okay, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, right? And the player of the... I'm sorry, the important point, the tongue-tied engineer that joined them, that was my introduction of a new player at the table. So that was his character, okay? He says, before anyone else goes, first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to go stand by Lord Tremaine. And the droids are going to collect up your weapons and bring them to us. And everyone looks and goes, what? And he goes, oh, by the way, let me introduce myself. I'm No Vulgariant, the Boba Fett analog. All it was the Boba Fett analog took his armor off, put it on someone else to stand guard, and then he took the role of the tongue-tied engineer. So he was a Confederate. And everyone was like, oh my, so that ended the game session, and they start the next one in prison trying to get out. Well, everyone thought it was amazing and brilliant. Perfect cliffhanger ending. Didn't see it coming, so on and so forth, especially when you have a player who is the Confederate, right? During the week in emails, the one player that I said was like a big cheat with his dice rolls blew up at me. And he was pissed. He's like, that is not how you play a role-playing game. You don't, you don't sell out your other players this way and blah, 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 and this and that. Basically, he had a problem because by having a player character playing an NPC, at least initially, he can't metagame, basically. And I'm like, the heck is wrong with you? I'm like, you know what? Fine, I'm done game mastering. That's it, we're done. The game's over. and everyone else starts ripping on him because it's like, this was a fun game and you had to be a jerk. And it was almost like 6 months before I started the game up again when the other players were like, we want to see what happens. Can we continue? We don't have to have him back again. And that's how he ended up leaving the thing. But it's like, man, it's like every time I come up with something really, really brilliant, there's that one guy that's got to be a dick, you know?
Yeah, like in real life, I try to be very unemotional.
Yeah.
Like as far as a game master, part of it is because, like, for instance, over the years with the super genre, you always get the Marvel is better, DC is better thing from the players, and then they want me to side with one or the other, and so I've tried really hard to be like they're equal.
Yeah.
Like Jack Kirby would work for one and then the other and go back. They're just equal. They all have their ups and downs. Let it go. And I have this real strong kind of neutrality referee, kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And I can think I had two guys who played named Matt and Carl, who at one point were roommates. And man, they would just get so hot under the collar at the drop of a hat. Like the littlest thing would happen and set them off. And they'd start yelling.
Yeah.
And I'd wait until they were done. And then I'd let there be an awkward pause. And I'd say, can I ask you a question? Are you yelling at the game master or are you yelling at the NPC the game master controls?
Yeah.
And they would have to stop and think about it. And they'd go, well, both. And I'd go, let's forget about the NPC for a minute because that's just a game. I don't care about that. Why are you yelling at me?
Yeah.
And they'd tell me, and I'd say, here's how it's going to be, is you're not going to yell at me. You can leave. If you want to go grab, and usually this was at the comic shop, and I'd be like, if you want to go up to the register where there's a little fridge, get yourself something to drink, or, you want to go out and smoke a cigarette, or you want to go grab a bite to eat, come back, and you feel calm, you can sit at the table.
Yeah. But,
and if you guys want to act, which I encourage, and you want to act angry at somebody, but you're not mad at me, then we're cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'd get mad at me in real life.
Let me. This one is a very, very short one, but I want to give a positive story. Okay.
Sure.
So I don't even remember what the adventure was now. I know it was a classic D&D module, but I don't remember which one it was. And my buddy Chris was dungeon mastering, and we had this recurring villain named Lareth. Lareth, I can't remember if he was an assassin or a magic user or what he was, but he was fairly powerful. Luckily, we were getting more powerful and he wasn't really advancing. But he had screwed us over a bunch of times and escaped so many times that we just hated this character. The way you want to hate a villain,
Right.
And so we had a combat that he was involved with. He wasn't the main bad. He was the Confederate, the assistant to the main bad. So we rolled for initiative, and then we declared our actions, and every single player targeted Lareth. So the very, first 2 or 3 characters dropped him, which would normally give the rest of the players after that, okay, you could choose another. He went down, so you can choose a different target. Nope. I chose my action. We're putting them into him. So we got arrows and everything flying at this corpse of Lareth. We dubbed him Lareth the Late. I said, there is no coming back from that. He's in pieces. And he's like, I think you got him. And it's like, okay, well, the others are going to attack him. We're like, we're fine with that as long as Lareth is dead. And it was just the happiest, funniest combat ever. We actually had to stop because we were all laughing so hard. Fireball and, lightning and I'm loosing my arrows at him. He's dead already. I don't care.
He's going to be a smear by the time
Yeah,
we're done.
he was. He was a smear on the ground. Oh.
Yeah, of
There's-
course.
There's this one time I ran a game, and kind of like you were saying earlier about you had analogs for Boba Fett and Jabba the Hutt and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I had an analog for Doctor Doom, and I had an analog for basically the Avengers, or were the team. Everybody on the team, and they made it. They were all original characters and DC heroes,
Sure.
but they people tend to make certain archetypes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The guy who's strong, who flies, all that, just tends to act like Superman.
Sure.
And so on and so forth. And fast guy is often the funny guy on the team. So on and so forth. But so we have this team that, for the sake of me telling the story, just imagine the Avengers. And again, the villain is Doctor Doom.
Sure.
And so he's raiding these sort of like scientific places, like Star Labs type stuff. And he's stealing, whatever, particle colliders and stuff like that with his Doombot minions. And he's got like hover tanks and stuff. And so the players show up and they fight him and they beat him. And the guy they think is him, when they beat him, he's just a Doombot that was like overseeing the thing. And there's kind of like, when they take the mask off, there's a TV screen there. And the guy is like, you guys are irritating me. I'm going to, this is your warning that you just walk away and let me be, or like, I will really screw you guys over. And the fast guy on the team is like, whatever, and talks a lot of crap to him. They break the Doombot, so on and so forth. This campaign goes on for, I think, 3 months, where instead of it's a different villain every week it's they're dealing with this guy, and they're always getting a little closer to catching him. And then the whole time, I don't want to telegraph it too much, but the party is really getting their act together, and they start to become this like well-honed, like early on, everybody was stumbling over each other. Everything was very awkward, and they're getting to be like a fine oiled machine just as they're going to get this guy. And they built this really elaborate headquarters, and they've got really elaborate security measures. And the Tony Stark of the team is making everybody power armor and stuff. And so, like, for instance, the one Namor type character had on his character sheet, he had a weakness to dehydration. So the armor would hydrate him, and like they're taking care of each other. And it's like this really ideal situation. And so they finally get to the villain's headquarters, and all their power armor seizes up. And they're like, what's going on? And so Iron Man takes off his helmet, and he's Victor Von Doom, basically. And he says, hey, thanks for telling me what all your weaknesses were. Thanks for giving me the password to the headquarters, so on and so forth. I've went ahead, and all the money you guys have made over the last 6 months or whatever has been transferred to my account. And I've got a special death trap for each one of you, where the Namor guy goes into kind of an oven kind of thing, and so on and so forth. And he's like, see you later. And his name was Techno, and he leaves and he gets away. And I really did. And I'm not the kind of guy that's like, I'm going to screw everybody over, but I wanted this guy to be a legitimate threat and everything. And I could not think of a way out of the death traps. And I kind of turned a point as a GM where no matter how much planning I did, someone always thought of something. So I just had blind faith in the players that they would think of something. And my friend Ryan was playing a character named High Bounce, as in high bounce balls. And he had this kinetic energy thing, but there'd be a little bit of kind of like a band, little thing of fire when he did his thing, right? And so his tube is full of flammable gas. So he can't flick the glass because that spark will blow him up, right? And so Ryan did not disappoint. His character goes up to the glass like a little kid on the window of a car, where he blows and makes his mouth real big, and he flicks it with his tongue.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And so I'm like, roll the dice. Like, I want to reward you for your creativity, but roll the dice. And he rolls a critical failure. So I'm like, boom, you explode and there's glass everywhere, but you're alive. like you're Freddy Krueger now, basically visually. He was kind of more of a plastic man, normal looking guy. And at any rate, now he's like horribly burnt, but he crawls over to the next thing and smacks that glass and blows it up from the outside. And now that guy is really, and so they don't die. They get out of their death traps. But to this day, someone will mention techno and everybody's like, ooh, techno. He's the one guy that got away. They never, and then some other time somebody hired a lawyer and these guys kind of cheated a lot. Josh and John were their names. And their thing was, like the one guy, Josh, he had a character named Barrage, who was sort of like a Magneto, but with martial arts. And he's like, I want to have my own dojo, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay. And so then one week he's like, I make up a new guy, and he's basically Gambit, and he's really into like Jeet Kune Do. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, and he joins Barrage's dojo. And then the next week I make this guy, and he's like Ben Grimm, and he's like a boxer, but he joins the dojo. And I'm like, wait a minute though, but you have an army now. Like you can't just have an army, and he was wanting situations like, if something happens to one of these characters, he's going to call up the other 20 and they'll show up, and I'm like, no, this is not working out right.
Yeah.
And he was being real weird. And another thing was at the beginning of the campaign, this was in GURP Supers. Uh-huh. And at any rate, at the beginning of the campaign, he took like, for those who don't know, in GURPS, if there's something like I'm ambidextrous, that's like it costs you 10 points because that's beneficial to your character, right? But if it's something that hurts you, like I'm afraid of heights, they might give you 10 points back.
Sure. To
buy a different advantage with, right? So at the beginning of the campaign, he bought this 100-point disadvantage called Wanted by the Government. And it was sort of like I was going to say the old 70s Hulk TV show where they're always on his heels.
I can hear the piano playing in my head.
And so at any rate, it eventually caught up with him, and he's like, well, I hired this lawyer, and and all 20 of my guys, we all put our money together and so on and so forth. And the lawyer shows up and listens to what he says and seems like a really smart guy. And Josh hasn't put any effort at all into sort of vetting this character to see if this guy's trustworthy. And the lawyer was techno. So he took everybody's money and left again. And, techno.
This is awesome. Oh gosh, and I love Fletcher Williams' reaction. Emotional damage. The Stephen He meme.
That guy's great. I love that guy.
Yeah, he is.
And of course, as all of us do, we go to conventions. I understand you have a couple interesting stories about Lou Ferrigno.
Oh yeah, she wants the Lou
Ferrigno stories.
I know you told it on Troy's channel. You got it.
Yeah. So I was at Mid-Ohio Con sometime in the 90s. I'm horrible at like what year was it or measurements or, just go with the spirit of the thing, right? So I'm at Mid-Ohio Con and Lou Ferrigno, like I walk in, Lou Ferrigno's over to the left and he's standing behind kind of like a card table and he's got photographs of the Hulk or whatever that he's going to sign. And he doesn't have anybody in line to see him at all. And he's wearing like a tank top and he's got arms the size of trees.
Right.
Like I'm not joking. Like you can't tell by looking at me now. Like I've gained a lot of weight over the years and so on and so forth. But when I was young, I was 6'4" and I weighed about 250 when I met Ferrigno. And like I played football and stuff like that, but Ferrigno made me feel small. Like that never happened. I was the biggest guy at my high school. I was the biggest guy at my college, so on and so forth. I meet Ferrigno and I just felt like a little kid in front of him, And so, I see he looks bored on that. And I walk up to him and I was like, hey, I loved you, on the Hulk and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And
he's sort of like, yeah, okay. He just seemed bored. He just didn't seem that interested. Also, by the way, he didn't have his, he's got hearing aids now. He was deaf. And now he can hear kind of for the first time, because we're sort of, if I said we're friends now, that's probably too much, but like we talk on Facebook and stuff. But at any rate, so when I'm saying this, part of that might be kind of a hearing thing. And so at any rate, he didn't seem that into it. And we're kind of standing there for a second, and it's sort of like awkward. And I kind of look around and I'm like, okay, so you want to wrestle? And he looks at me and he's like, what? And I said, I mean, do you want to wrestle? Because like that would be really cool. I would be really in to like telling my friends that I got to fight the Hulk, you know. And he kind of looks at me for a minute like, are you something wrong with you, you know? And he just goes, okay. So he sets his bottle of water down, and he comes out from around the table, and he does the thing kind of like in high school wrestling where there's this like, I can't do it like because I'm in my chair and stuff. You know what I mean? He does the pose.
You take the stance, right?
But it's very like half-hearted.
Yeah.
Right? And so clearly we're not on the same page here, right? Because I'm like, this is your one chance in your entire life, right? So I'm like, rah! And like as hard as I possibly can, I just charge him, and I got him on the ground, you know? And which is not, I'm not trying to say I'm awesome. There's none of that, right? Looking back, I think that was kind of like the equivalent of a sucker punch, really, because we were not on the same page there. And so, but now I'm on top of Lou Ferrigno, right? And he just effortlessly is like, woof, you know? Yeah. And like, I'm like a little kid, and I'm like, I'm flying. And like that does not happen. And I'm a horrible judge of distance. I don't know if it was like 10 feet before I hit carpet, or, I mean, it felt like something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so I go over there and I hit, and like, I get up and he gets up, and I think he's kind of like, is this guy a lunatic? Like, you know? And I'm just like, you know?
Yeah, like a lunatic.
But I'm like, that was awesome, you know? And like, I was so excited. And my friends who are all in a Star Trek club, they're doing security at the convention. And they see me just tackle Lou Ferrigno for like, no, they're like, what are you doing, dude? And they come running over. And like, part of it is they're like, we can't stop Chris. I mean, because these guys are all very like Napoleon Dynamite. You know what I mean? And
Fletcher Williams, lunatic, confirmed.
and so at any rate, but I was laughing, and then Lou starts laughing about it, right? And I think it clicked for him.
Yeah.
And there's kind of I don't know how to say this and make it. I'm going to make myself sound like a jerk, and I don't think that's how it is. But when you're a big guy, you kind of like to fight with other big guys in a way,
sure.
Not to hurt them, but there's a physical thing, right? You know, and so I had an awesome time, and I think he recognized that and everything, right? And then we talked, and I don't know how long I stood there and talked to him. But he wasn't bored anymore, you know. He was having a good time now. And so,
right.
So then the next year I go to Mid-Ohio, and I don't know if it was the next year or the year after, but the point being, I go again, and I see him, and I'm on my way to see somebody else where I kind of got to be there in a certain time frame, you know, because there's like a panel discussion, or I don't know what it was. But at any rate, whatever it is, I'm kind of like making a beeline for one thing, and I see Lou, and I look over at him, and he sees me in the crowd and goes like that. And he kind of smiles, and so I pointed back to him, and I was like, hey, how you doing? And he goes, don't hit me. And so I go do the thing or whatever, and then afterwards I came back and I talked to Lou, and he knew exactly who I was, because I guess he doesn't get a lot of that.
You made an impression.
Right. So he knows. So, and we laugh and we have a good time and whatever. And then I go back the year after that. And I see Lou and shake his hand and say it's good to see him. And I'm like, how are you doing? And he just starts telling me about whatever was going on in his life at the time. I can't remember what it was. It's like he had car trouble on the way to the convention or something. And he's like telling me about it. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. All right, well, I hope your day gets better. I'll probably see you again later,
Yeah.
whatever. And we're going around, and I'm with Josh, who I mentioned earlier that had the dojo thing. And I'm with two friends, Josh Boggs and Jason Seidner. And so Josh Boggs sees David Carradine sitting under a no smoking sign, high as a kite or hungover or something.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell. And smoking. He's just sitting there smoking. And so Josh is like, oh my God, David Carradine. Because in real life, he was in martial arts, by the way. Left that out. And Josh, by that point, actually did start his own dojo in real life.
Huh.
And so he goes up to David Carradine, and he is just like worshiping the ground that David Carradine walks on. He's like, oh, Mr. Carradine, I'm so into you. I have my own dojo, sir, and it's all because I watched you on TV and And I mean, you could not ask for a more like flattering fan interaction, And David Carradine's just like glaring at him like, you piece of crap. It's kind of like the look on his face. And he's just being a jerk, right? And so Josh, there's like this sort of awkward pause where Josh quits talking, and I don't know. Carradine says something to Josh like, so you got shit for me to sign or what, Yeah. And it was that kind of a thing. And so, for better or worse, when I was young, I had a mouth on me, And I'm like, so like, you don't really know martial arts, right? That's a bunch of Hollywood bullshit, right? Like, you're not even Asian or anything. And right. And so he's like, I could kick your ass. And I was like, well, that's a stupid thing to say. For all you know, I'm a ninja. And he goes, I could kick the shit out of everybody at this convention. And I was like, hold that thought. And I run over and I go, Lou Ferrigno, David Carradine just said he could kick your ass. And Lou Ferrigno, like when I walked up to him, he's smiling and he's happy, and it just drains out of his face. And he goes, hold my water. And he hands me his water bottle, and he just walks over to David Carradine's table, And so Jason Seidner gets really scared, and he's like, oh, like, did we just start a riot? What's going on, And so he's like, I'm leaving. And he was our ride. And which that sucks for two reasons. And I didn't say the second reason last week. I don't know how to tell this story without really pissing off my wife.
She's not watching, is she?
She will tomorrow. She will tomorrow. So at any rate, I guess I'll just embrace the doghouse. So earlier that day, before all that happened, we get there, and we're looking around and so on and so forth. And there's this girl. And do you know who Carrie Keegan is? She's like
sounds vaguely familiar.
Google her. But at any rate, this girl, she's an artist, and she's drawing pictures, and stuff. And I'm trying to think of someone else I could compare her to. Carrie Keegan's a pretty good, looked a lot like her. But at any rate, so she's like an artist row or whatever, and she's drawing pictures of girls like I think the first picture I see is it's like Jean Grey, and she's on her knees and she's undoing Wolverine's belt. Like that's what it's a drawing of, right? And then the next picture is like Rogue on her knees undoing Gambit's belt, and it's like always the same pose, And I'm like, okay, but this girl, or I'll put it this way, in real life, the artist looked like Power Girl. if you know who Power Girl is from DC
As a
Comics.
matter of fact, I just found a DeviantArt picture of her as Power Girl. Yes.
Yeah. So that's what she looks like in real life, And so she's drawing this stuff, and she's like, "Do you want a drawing?" And I said, "Maybe. I don't know. How much are the drawings or whatever?" And I don't know. She tells me that's reasonable, not that much. And I was like, "Yeah, sure, maybe." And I was like, "Can you draw my character from the role playing game?" And she's like, "Yeah." And we get to talking, and she's like drawing somebody else's thing for them. And while we're talking, I found out she collects Transformers. And I collect Transformers. And I'm like, "Oh, really?" And we kind of strike up a conversation, and we like hit it off. And then when she starts drawing the thing, she's putting my face on it and her face on it, which she was not doing before, right? And so she happens to be sitting right next to Bendis. And I think Bendis was doing, maybe it was Ultimate Spider-Man at the time or something. And he's kind of looking at what she's doing, and he's looking at me like, "Dude, like, holy crap, good for you," that kind of thing. And she's like, "So after the thing today, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Nothing." And she's like, "Oh, we're going to have a party up in my room. You ought to come up to my room after the convention." And I was like, yes, I will be there, right? So now, mind you, with that in mind, Ferrigno walks over to Carradine, and Seidner says, "I'm leaving."
Oh, I see the problem. Yeah.
So you don't get to see if they fight, and you don't get to go to the party.
I didn't get to go to that party. Bendis, who I know everybody hates Bendis, I basically know nothing about him, but he high-fived me. Like, she went on to draw for other people. I went over to his table, and he was like, "Dude, yes!" Like, that was, she is way out of your league. Like, good job, dude.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. Oh, those kinds of stories are the best,
That was a really good con, too. The only other thing that happened there, and this isn't maybe that great or whatever, I never watched Farscape.
I haven't seen it either. Yeah.
But there was an actress on there who, the character, I think, was bald and had blue skin.
Mm-hmm.
And at any rate, at that particular Mid-Ohio Con, they had like a bunch of Playboy Playmates there, right? And at any rate, that actress from Farscape walked in, and in real life, she has like long blonde hair and everything. And everybody just stopped and looked at her and was like, "Wow." Like, I've never seen a human being that looked like that before. It was like poison ivy with pheromones or something, right? And who nobody was looking at was the Playboy Playmates. Like, they had like Ali Baguette. It would be kind of that era, like around the year 2000, as far as Playboy is concerned. But nobody cared about Playboy. Everybody's looking at the chick from Farscape. And I was like, wow. Yeah. Also, to nail down the year, that was when G.I. Joe reinstated. You know what? That'd be 2001. I bet that was October or November of 2001 is when this con was. Because there was a new G.I. Joe comic. Because when I had my shop, 9/11 happens, of course. And the very next day, G.I. Joe hit. And G.I. Joe is all-American anti-terrorist organization. And like that flew off the shelves.
I would imagine,
we just kept ordering more and more of that. But that guy was there. And then his girlfriend was like cosplaying as Zorana, the pink-haired one. And they were like fighting. I just remember him and his girlfriend were like breaking up in the middle of the convention. I don't know. It was an interesting convention.
No, that's some great stuff. Absolutely.
Well, now, you didn't get with the girl at the one convention, but you did marry a very lovely lady, and I understand you have a vow renewal coming up. So how many years has it been?
20.
Wow.
This summer is 20. No. It was, see, I said I'm going to be at the doghouse. It worked out. It worked out for the best. Actually, me meeting my wife thing, you might like that story if that's okay. So my comic book shop was in Mansfield, Ohio, and Mansfield, Ohio had this company called AK Steel.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, probably around 2001, they sold the company to somebody else, and those guys fired everybody in Mansfield and sent the work overseas so it could be done cheaper, right? We probably all got a story like that. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the end of my shop, because the first week after that happened, I had about 1,000 regular poll customers.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet half of them came in that first week and said, I got to cancel my poll. I lost my job. And I was like, oh crap,
Yeah.
And then the next week, out of the ones that hadn't canceled, about half of them came in and said, I got to cancel my poll because my dad got fired, or it's my brother got fired and I got to help his family out now. So,
Wow.
no matter how you looked at it, and now with them gone, the town has really gone downhill.
Yeah.
And is very Rust Belt now,
Yeah.
But yeah, so I didn't realize it, but that was the end for me. And so I did, and like nobody would buy the store because everybody knew it was the whole Rust Belt situation,
Right.
So I was just liquidating everything. And the very last night I was open, I called my cousin Brandon and I said, hey, you still got a pickup truck? And he's like, yeah. I was like, why don't you bring it over at closing? This is the last night. And I'm going to throw stuff in there, And by the way, to this day, I basically have an entire comic shop in my basement downstairs, because I've never been able to sell it for what stuff is worth, But at any rate, so he comes over and he's got 3 girls with him. And the one, her name's Jade, and she's the one he's interested in. And so the other 2 are her friends. And the one kind of looked like Amy Schumer in a way, kind of a chubby blonde,
Mm-hmm.
And one of my friends was kind of talking to her. And then the third one was my wife, Rachel. Of course, she wasn't my wife yet.
Right.
And so, and I could count on one hand how many times girls came in my store. Just never happened, right? And when they did, and I talked to them, we had nothing in common. And if they liked a comic, it was usually something I wasn't real into,
Right.
So at any rate, my, a little bit about me, I collect Transformers.
Mm-hmm.
I like to draw. I play role-playing games. I like comic books. Those are the big 4. And I'd never dated a girl who liked more than one. I was lucky if I could find someone that just liked one of those 4 things. And so at any rate, Rachel comes in and I'm like, is there anything I can help you with? And she says, I'm looking for ElfQuest comics. And I said, yeah, there's probably, some of those around here or whatever. And she was like, how much do you want for them? And I said, man, I'm going out of business. I don't even care. You can just have them. And I was like, what other comic books do you read? And she's like, oh, X-Men, Justice League.
Nice.
I was like, wow. And I was like, you want to go out sometime? And she's like, no, absolutely not. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we go outside and we're loading stuff in the truck and everything. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, if you don't get her to go out with you, you're going to regret this for the rest of your life. Well, I left it out. Okay, wait. So she likes to draw. She plays D&D. She reads comic books. She likes Transformers. 4 out of 4, right? So I'm like, if you don't get her to go out with you, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. And I'm thinking about, what do you do? What do you do? And so she wanted something to drink. So I go in and I get her, something out of the refrigerator. And I said, hey, you know what? You ought to go out with me, because if you don't like it, you never have to see me again. If you do, if something clicks, then we'll cross that bridge when you come on. What do you say? She's like, no, absolutely not. I'm like, okay. And so we go outside and I don't know, I'm telling jokes. She's laughing at all my jokes, so on and so forth. And so finally out of sheer desperation. And they're like, Brandon's like, well, I got to go. You know, I'll drop this stuff off, you know, where you're storing it. You know, see you tomorrow or whatever. And so the very last ditch effort is I just walked up to Rachel and I said, you will go out with me. And she goes, I will go out with you. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, thank you, George Lucas, you know. And so every once in a while, I'll catch my kids, you know, my daughter will be like, Star Wars sucks. And I'll be like, if not for Star Wars, you would not exist. Be here. Yeah. But no, there's, I could tell you a whole big story about what happens. We probably don't have time for it. Some other time, I'll have to tell you.
I was just going to say, we're just going to have you back for another. This is really, really awesome.
I'll give you the cliffhanger, and this is true. I swear to God, I didn't know it at the time, but her dad had gone to Vietnam, and like mentally, he never came home.
Yeah.
And all he did was drink and watch war movies 24/7. That's all he did, you know. Mm-hmm. And her mom had some mental problems. And at any rate, they had taken the kids away from the family and they put them in foster care. And it turns out the guys who signed up for foster care had a cult. And they did it because then the government would just give them kids. Right?
Wow.
And so the reason she was saying no, it wasn't that she wasn't into me. It's she was afraid of going home that night and them finding out that she was doing something out in the world, you know.
Wow.
With a guy. Yeah. And so when I had liquidated the store and I had that money,
yeah,
one of the things I did was set her up in an apartment then. And, you know,
yeah.
And that first year dealing with those guys was its own story.
Man, yeah, no, that is a cliffhanger. We'll have to have you back just to hear the rest of it. Now, this is what I just realized. So you run the longest running superhero role-playing game in the world. You're telling your story of your role-playing game on your YouTube page. Clearly you are a storyteller. And then when we get you telling your own stories about yourself, they are so compelling. You are a storyteller. Yes. That is what you are. That is your superpower. That's amazing, man.
Thank you. I take that as high praise.
And I am hoping now, because I'm going back to something you said way earlier. You were talking about the big multiplayer Crisis on Infinite Earths game. I'm looking forward to seeing maybe even a series on your channel about that story. That sounds like it would be really good.
That would be...
He's thinking, oh God, that would be a lot of work.
Well, I mean, we already did it. You know, we did it in one night, and it was kind of a mess, honestly.
Oh,
like the bigger thing was kind of the build up to it and everything like that. It's all on my channel. I mean, everything I could say is on the channel already. Okay. I had thought of something. I uploaded a game today that's one of my favorite games we've ever done, actually. Uh-huh. And it's our main guy is the bear, and it was the bear versus Lobo. And I didn't even run
that, and your thumbnail was like a female Lobo.
That's Lobo's daughter, and that's why Lobo's angry.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me, sorry.
I fully understand the allergy. I didn't on myself.
But yeah, I didn't even run it. Greg Sheets ran that one. He was one of our other GMs, and it was just really good. It was a really good game. And if you're curious about my channel, I would say listen to that one adventure.
Yeah.
And if you don't like that one, you won't like anything I ever do.
I have it in my to listen or watch later. Didn't get because I was busy today. But now I especially want to see it now that I know it's supposed to be his daughter. I want to know the story behind that because. Yeah, I remember he like used to clone himself whenever he'd bleed and stuff like that.
Well, he got
then he got neutered.
It's in okay. It's in the comics where he got somebody pregnant. I don't think it's a clone. I think it's a biological daughter.
It would have to be. Sure.
And then she's raised in Mexico, and I believe it's Mexico. And so her name, what's her name's Crush. It's either Crush or Crash.
Okay.
But then she has an alter ego that escapes me now. But
I called her Lupina.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, the wolf thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Lobo's wolf.
Right.
She's hardly in it. And it was kind of we did this one adventure where it was, boy. See, I'm trying to be really short. Brevity is not my strong suit. But anyway, we did this adventure with a bunch of Superman analogs having a bar fight. So it's like, because what it is the crisis is coming, right?
Right.
And the bear ends up with the Infinity Gauntlet, which is a long story. And as it's getting closer to the crisis, everybody kind of puts all their eggs in that basket.
Uh-huh.
But then certain characters were like, oh, that's too much power for any one man to wield, blah, blah, blah. And they kind of screw him over where it starts to lose its power.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, you idiots, like, I might have had this under control, you know? So there's a lot of stuff with that going on. But the point is, he makes this bar. And the whole thing is that the bar door can connect to any other bar door in any place or any time ever, right?
That's awesome.
And so your D&D characters from your D&D campaign might go to walk into a medieval tavern, and instead you walk into this tiki bar with Captain Kirk and Luke Skywalker and whatever, and you're like, what the hell's going on here, right? And it's called the Continuum Bar and Grill. And so characters from the future are there, characters from the past are there. And so at any rate, in the bar, in this one adventure, is like Homelander, Omni-Man, Invincible, Hyperion,
I
right?
See how this is going. Okay, yeah.
Brightburn, and at any rate, someone's whining about the fact that Bear has the Infinity Gauntlet, and so Homelander from The Boys is like, "What's an Infinity Gauntlet?" And so he's like, "Well, I'm gonna kick the crap out of this Bear guy and take his bedazzled oven mitt for myself, you know." And so there's this massive fight, and I'm not saying the Bear would normally win, but by virtue of the Infinity Gauntlet, he wins.
Right.
And we set up this thing that is kind of, you sort of can't rely on other people to solve the problem for you. You guys got to figure this out, is kind of the theme there. But so Lobo's daughter is there and sees this and is kind of like, hey, I kind of like that guy, you know? And so we just sort of, that's the prologue to that game. And then when you get into the plot, you don't see her again.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only mention of her. But Lobo shows up in the bar and is like, you know, which one of you bastards just knocked up my little girl? You know?
I say that sometimes. That's where it comes from, is Lobo. That's right.
Yeah. So they just have a knockdown, drag out fight, you know? And it's just fun. And like at one point, the Bears, I can't remember it now, but because I had to call Greg and be like, how does this go again? Because you ran this. But Lobo's like, I'm here to kick your ass and blah, 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 blah. And the Bear's like, oh, I thought Kiss was in town. And it's like, yes, just the whole game plays out like that, where it's like they're both kind of smart asses. Yeah. They're both really tough. They're just beating the absolute crap out of each, you know. So it's a lot of fun. And it's there's this thing with Lobo where one time he died and went to hell. And hell said, basically, you're too bad. We don't want you.
Yeah, get out of here. Right, exactly.
They sent him to heaven, and heaven's like, no way. And so he ended up on Earth. And Greg ran it that way. And Greg said, so you can't kill him. What do you do now? And the Bear was literally at one point doing these Infinity Gauntlet punches, you know.
Yeah.
And Lobo just kept coming back and is like, you know, harder, daddy. You know, it's a lot of stuff like that. So it's pretty funny. It was a good adventure.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, great stuff. If you're not already subscribed to the longest running superhero role-playing game on Earth, you absolutely need to be. That's where these stories are. I'm sorry. We just kind of ran away with your whole your whole show
I had
here.
so much fun with you as my guest. I mean, I love your stories. Like Troy said, you are a great storyteller. I
Well,
could
thank
sit
you.
here and listen to you for hours.
Yep.
Speaking of your stories, what do you have coming up?
Well, the Lobo thing is because we're going to do the Continuum Bar and Grill, and sometimes I don't really advertise this too much. But sometimes I'll run the same thing twice if it was a lot of fun, and a lot of people are like, "Well, how do you do that?" And it's kind of like if you're familiar with Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Let's say I ran the dance in 1955, and the players all had a great time, and I say, "Okay, well now Marty's back at the dance, crawling around in the rafters in a leather jacket, right. And like, yes, you're at the dance again, but you're not doing what you did the first time around." So sometimes I'll do that where I'll run the same adventure twice.
Sure.
So I'm actually gearing up to run the Continuum Bar and Girl stuff again, and that is based on a series of modules called Tales from the Floating Vagabond. And in that, it's a space bar. We make it a tiki bar just because, for whatever reason, there's certain things that I think are kind of like, I don't know if I'd say funny, but there's like a pop culture thing to it.
Quirky, yeah.
And yeah, and like it's kind of like when I think of Hawaiian shirts, I kind of think like Weird Al Yankovic.
Yeah.
Or like a barbecue in someone's backyard in the 1950s, or you know what I mean? And then I start to equate that with maybe Godzilla, or but so we really try to play up the weirdness, and I mean, I'm ripping off these modules, but at the same time I read it and okay, that's the skeleton of the story, but I disagree with a bunch of stuff they did.
Yeah.
So I'm going to run it my way, and I'm going to kind of, because their thing is a little on the nose, and it's kind of Monty Python, you know what I mean? And I'm like,
exactly.
Well, let's maybe make it a little more Deadpool or something, and a little more superhero-y. But yeah, I was just talking to the players today, and I said, what's your favorite 80s cartoon? And my kid's mom said Silverhawks. And I said, okay, I think you should make an original character who's one of the Silverhawks. You know, and my son's like, Transformers. And I'm like, I think you should make a Transformer. Make him a motorcycle or something so he can walk into a bar. But, something small, but, make a Transformer. And I think that's what the PCs are going to be. And then I think we're going to run the first in the Vagabond series, which the story of that is in the 1950s, aliens, it was like a Mars needs women thing, right?
Yeah.
And so they abducted beautiful teenage girls and stuff, but now it's all these years later, and they've got housewives with curlers in their hair and rolling pins and ray guns, and they run the planet. And so the monsters need saved from the women is the kind of the joke with that.
Nice.
And I'm still looking at a motorcycle walks into a bar.
Yeah. I made a motorcycle character that was really, really popular back in the day. He was supposed to be like a bright green crotch rocket like you see around. And I couldn't think of a good name for him, so we just called him Cycle. But like originally the Transformers in season 1, each one had a superpower. And I decided his superpower was Mr. Fusion from Back to the Future. So he could actually, so he could eat. And like they would go to Taco Bell and he'd like be eating burritos and stuff, He'd order like 10 burritos or something.
Be careful, those things are powerful.
But he was a really popular character. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right.
Now, what do we got coming up on Friday night? Let's call tomorrow, sweetie.
Tomorrow night, Netter and I have a double date planned with Cannoli Sasquatch and Mrs. Cannoli Sasquatch. That's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm going to be making a cannoli pie.
Yep.
For Troy.
Yep.
Because I don't have any cannoli shells. But I got pie shells, like graham cracker ones, so I'm going to make a cannoli pie. We're going to see how that turns out.
I think that's going to be awesome. That's Friday.
And then Saturday...
I don't know. What are we doing Saturday?
Well, we're going to be watching this little tiny musical. You may have heard of it. It's called Chicago.
Yep.
Over on my
And all that
channel,
jazz.
here on Network.
Absolutely.
And we're going to have a lot of fun with that. I like musicals, most musicals. And this one's just got something to it that I really like. I mean, it's my
got the
hometown.
Chicago
Yeah.
Avenue, yeah.
I mean, I'm a Chicago girl. I was born and raised in Chicago. Now I'm in the burbs, but I'm a Chicago girl. And I just really like this musical because I also like that it's kind of set in the 20s, so I like that kind of 20s vibe to it, which is also why I like Thoroughly Modern Millie, which when I get to the T's, we'll be watching that one from my movies. But yeah, I just like the vibe in it. And in fact, it's my understanding that Catherine Zeta-Jones only wanted to be in it to be able to sing one song.
Yep.
She's like, I want to be in this movie. I have to sing the song. And it was like, okay, you're in. I mean, she can act. She proved herself with that. She can sing. She proved herself with that. I think, if you've never seen it before, you're really going to like the film.
Well, we'll save all the trivia for Saturday night.
And then on Sunday over on Geeky Geezers.
Well, before Geeky Geezers.
I'm sorry. I keep forgetting. We have deleted scenes.
And I'm sure Deleted Scenes can drop the link for us.
Please.
That would be 7 Central. Wait a minute. No. 6 Central, 7 Eastern. Deleted Scenes Unscripted. And I forgot what the title was. So he's going to drop that link. He is the official lead-in to Geeky Geezers, which will of course be on Age of Boomers channel. We will bring you the 8 Eastern, so 7 Central. There. Thank you very much. We will be bringing you all the geek news of the week, at least the stuff that we found interesting. Some of it might be a little different than what some of the other channels are bringing you. And if we do bring you something that the other channels are bringing you, hopefully we have a slightly different perspective that you won't hear on the other channels. That is Sunday. And honestly, Dega, welcome. He says, "Oh fudge, I'm late." That's fine. You can always rewind afterwards and get caught up. But that's fine. Dega is going to be joining us here on Netters Network in a couple weeks, so that'll be awesome. And that's as far as I know. I don't know anything until next Thursday.
And then next Thursday, right here again on my channel, we're going to be having a artist, Serility.
Yep.
So
come on
if you
back
want to preview,
and
go check out their channel
and see some art.
And see some of their artwork. But they're going to be here talking about their art, their processes, and that sort of thing. So make sure that you join us for that.
Yep.
And that's all that I have. Unless you want to talk about who you're going to have the next Friday.
No, let's not get too far ahead. I just want to thank you a lot, Chris. Like I said, I wasn't just blowing smoke, man. You really are a great storyteller. And
well, thank you.
The time just flies,
It
when you're on. So we definitely do have to have you back sometime.
Yeah, I want to hear more stories.
Absolutely. That's all I got.
Okay. So any final words, Chris?
No, not really. Hope everybody has a good weekend,
Yep.
See you later.
Troy?
That's it. That's all I got.
And you guys always know what I say.
Yep.
We can talk amongst ourselves, and that's all well good and fun, but it's so much more fun when you guys are joining us in the chat. You're dropping your questions, comments, your trivia, you're acting goofy, whatever it may be. And it doesn't feel like we're separated by miles or continents in some cases. It feels like we're all hanging out in the same room, just enjoying each other's company and having a great time.
Yep.
And you're not just our friends. You're our family. We love you guys, and we super appreciate you being here with us and just spending this time with us, taking time out of your day to be here and enjoying the conversation. It means a lot to us. And, if you're not already subbed to everybody in the stream, please make sure that you do. Make sure you're subbed to our guest for tonight. His link is not only in the chat, but it's pinned below in the description. So make sure you're subscribed to him. If you think you are subbed to somebody, please double check that you are still subbed to them, because as I mentioned earlier, YouTube likes to take away subs, and we want to make sure that everyone is still subbed to everyone.
Absolutely.
Because remember, as PJ from Marvel Nation says, together we grow.
Yep.
I know that Deleted Scenes is only a few away from his 200. Please make sure that you are sub to him. Let's get him to that 200. And that is all that I have for tonight. We will see you next time. Bye for now.